Okay. We're good?
Hold on. You're good on everything except TikTok, but yeah, you're good. To renew access, you need to meet the access requirements. TikTok's not going to give it to you. Start.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Rahi Victory. Welcome to Fertility Factor Fiction. And tonight we have an amazing special guest, Ms. Elizabeth King, a fertility coach extraordinaire, and she is joining us to talk about all things related to fertility coaching and her experience with fertility patients and how she helps facilitate their journey. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will have you on in just a moment. I have not found a ton of articles since last week, although there is probably one I'll bring up with you guys shortly. And then we'll probably do another show because it was kind of an interesting one on the impact of fertility clinics that are owned by businesses and private equity and venture capital, because there was just a study released on that. So I'm so happy to see someone had the chutzpah to go and do it. And that study showed that there was a increase in costs, and no one has ever shown that there is a benefit in terms of outcome. So that should be interesting to see, and I think that would be particularly useful and very interesting. So something to look at, and something we'll definitely be checking out, and exciting for sure for all of us. So I'm super excited to have you guys all here, and welcome aboard for the show, and welcome to Ms. King. So Elizabeth King is a very renowned fertility coach, and she is joining us tonight to answer your questions and to share her knowledge and wisdom and experiences with us. So welcome aboard, Ms. King. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very, very great honor to have you on board. So tell me a little bit about you and what kind of got you into fertility coaching and what sort of background you have from all this.
Sure. Well, my real story actually started 27 years ago when I was 19. My sister was diagnosed with a rare cervical cancer and had to do a radical hysterectomy within a matter of days, and was told that they could keep her ovaries, and yet you were going to be doing extreme radiation and chemotherapy. So even in my 19-year-old brain, I knew that the chances of anything surviving within that was probably not likely. We were focused on the fact that we wanted her to survive. She was focused on the fact that she would never be able to have children. Now, again, this was many years ago, and the technology is much different now. And there's four of us, four girls. We all went to this RE to say, we'll have the baby for her.
Right.
And that kind of led on the initial education around fertility. Again, 19 years old, I didn't know what a cervix was at that time, etc. Fast forward to getting divorced at age 30, I went to go freeze my own eggs, and at that time was told I was too young based on the technology at the time.
Okay.
And went back again at 36, still single, and the doctor said, okay, well, we'll do it now because technology has changed a bit, and here we go. So fast forward to age 39 and pushing 40, I had some fibroids that my regular OB had told me it was not an issue, and my gut feeling was, so I went back to the fertility doctor again, who now knew me very well, and said, yes, in fact, those fibroids are an issue in trying to get pregnant based on the location. I did a myomectomy and was pregnant the first time that I could try after that. Went on to have 3 children after the age of 40, subsequent miscarriages, etc. And it was through that first miscarriage that I had taken my previous 15-year life coach practice into really focusing into fertility, and recognizing that this up and down journey of waiting for, calls every other day from the RE of what's happening, what's not happening, was such a roller coaster, and really just another day in the office for them. And for us, it was life-changing. We were hanging on to every single call that we were getting from that doctor.
Right.
And the PTSD from the experience and the miscarriage losses was profound. So
Right.
here we are now, years later, and helping other people through that journey.
Amazing. That is a very rich background story. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now you've of course piqued my curiosity. So did one of the sisters end up carrying for your sister?
No, she has no children. She is the only surviving patient of that type of cancer in the
Wow.
world,
Wow.
still to this day. So she's kind of famous in that gynecological oncology world, but
Sure.
no children.
Well, I mean, as long as she's had a
She's
good,
alive.
healthy life since then, at least that's something
Absolutely.
to be happy about. So that's good. So you mentioned life coach. So I'm assuming you kind of took the experience from what had happened with you as a young woman and built that into a career as a life coach, and then transitioned from that life coach part to the fertility part. Is that the right
Correct.
sequence?
Correct. I had been seeing therapists throughout my life for different reasons, marriage therapists through my first marriage, etc. And it was
Sure.
kind of through that first experience realizing there has to be a different way of just talking about stuff and really moving forward with a path and a plan and accountability to for somebody to do that. And back then in 2009, there was life coaches really weren't a thing too much. It was,
Right.
oh, okay, you're from California, you eat sushi, you're a life coach, and you probably do yoga every day, kind of thing. And now it's much more well known, and kind of we're dealing with the same type of thing with fertility coaching, where people don't really know what does that even mean, and where does it fit into this whole structure.
Right. So, did you have any kind of fertility support when you were a patient yourself as you went through your own journey?
No, I didn't. And the poor phlebotomists and all the people that were there every day, go watching me go through this journey, they were certainly weren't qualified to be dealing with the emotional aspect through it. And
Yeah.
I was very aware of that at the time too, having been in that type of mental health place of helping others. And they were amazing and were doing the best they could, but really that wasn't what they were there to be paid to do every day too, is to, oh, poor Elizabeth, you're going to be okay. That wasn't their role. So no, I wasn't supported in that sense. And when I asked about it, really the only option that was given at that time was resolve, which is great, but also at this time wasn't really what it is today, and it was only for group settings. And at that
Right.
time, I didn't really feel like I resonated too much with a lot of like going to tell my story in a group setting, so to speak, at that moment.
Well, for sure, it's a deeply personal journey for many people, and it's not necessarily the kind of thing they want to share in a group. I mean, this has some of the most intimate details of any individual or couple's lives. So, of course, it can be hard to open up to a group of people and say, this is what's going on with me. So I totally understand that. So, yeah, I guess you kind of saw that lack of support and thought this would be a great area. So, did you kind of develop this on your own, or did you do any training in it, or did it just kind of come organically because you had gone through the process yourself?
Both, actually. I think I remember saying to my doctor, I feel like I'm getting this huge master's degree in a whole new language and education just by all the questions. And I'm sure he was very annoyed by all the questions. But I knew early on, again, because of my history with the medical side from my sister, as well as just being exposed to it, I really realized I geek out on all this stuff. I was super fascinated by it. I loved everything about it. I loved the fact that it was, for lack of a better term, kind of a growing industry and people were talking about it more. I was really fascinated by that because of where I had seen it come years prior to it, right? When we first started it in 1994, it was hard to find a reproductive endocrinologist, really. And
Yeah.
now in Orange County, where I live, they're very easy to be found, essentially. So I got a lot of education from my own journey, but then also did a certification program in a fertility health process where I learned a lot from midwives, doulas, nurses, doctors, everybody kind of bringing that together. And even within that, noticed that it was very medical based. And I really wanted to come to a process where we were talking about the mind, body, and spirit and how all of those things came to play, because I felt like we couldn't talk about one thing without the other and vice versa. Again, from my own experience and helping other women throughout the journey, recognizing that all of these things come to play.
So what's a typical client that's looking for your services? Kind of, paint me a picture of who they are and then sort of what you offer them and how that works. Excuse me.
Everyone kind of, as you have seen, everyone comes with a different story and a different objective. Some people come because they've tried 6 rounds of IVF and they're just at their wits' end. Some people are finally taking a break and they just don't know what else to do next.
Right.
So I find that people who are down this road are super motivated to figure out what to do next. And they're very type A. They feel like I've checked all the boxes, I've done all the things, and I just want somebody to help with whatever that missing piece is. And sometimes it's figuring out what are they seeing that they didn't realize that they need to be addressing. Again, maybe they're super stressed with work, maybe they're having some other gut issues and other things happening because of the stress, or whatever it may be. Relationship issues I see a lot of times because of the fertility journey, and or financial issues. So there's all this combination of other things that have gone into it, as well as figuring out how to change clinics and why they might need to do that. Recently, we see a lot of people that have been told they need to go down the egg donation route, and that's really hard to get their head around. So we help them kind of step into that, see what that looks like, talk to other clients that have gone through that so they can see they have their baby and it's amazing, and it's really not that difficult of a process once you get your head around that idea.
Sure.
And most people never think they're going to be told that that's the road they need to go down. So it takes a lot of different turns based on what they've been through. Perhaps miscarriage loss is their kind of Achilles heel, and they've been through it many times, and they're just kind of frustrated and not getting the answers that they're looking for.
Right.
So we approach it from a standpoint of meeting them where they're at and understanding the ups and downs of the waiting process of IVF, the egg retrieval process, the miscarriage loss, and how do you start again after that. And that's really, Dr. Victory, where I saw the gap was when I had gone to a therapist after my first miscarriage, and I was devastated. Could not even speak. And I didn't know, I left that office not knowing if this woman had had a miscarriage, not had a miscarriage, did she have any kids? And I was just looking for hope. And most therapists, I won't say all, but most don't really share their own experience through it. Right. And being a coach, you really do kind of coach them through it like a personal trainer or an athletic coach, where you're in it with them. You're talking to them. It's not just, I'll see you Tuesday at 3 to talk about this. This could be, I got a call from my doctor today and we need to pivot fast and I don't know what to do. Right. So that's a little bit of how it works depending on who and what they're coming to the table with.
So, and by the way, for the audience that's watching, if you have questions, don't hesitate to post them, and Tarek's here and he'll get to those. But do you, I'm going to monopolize you first. So do you tend to work one-on-one with your clients, or do you have a team of people that are facilitating this? And then is it mostly like dialogue, or do you have them run through exercises? I know like there are online programs, that kind of thing. So how do you kind of walk them through their journey? Are there different tools for different groups like you just mentioned, or is it kind of a strategy or generalized approach that you take at least initially to get them up and running?
I mean, initially we always talk about where they've been and what's gotten them to where they're at right now, and what is it that they want to get out of coaching. Everybody seeks somebody out with an outcome. They want to feel better, or they want a baby, really, in our cases, right? When people come to see us, that's the bottom line. But most, they just want to navigate this process in a more calm and playful, joyful manner instead of it being so heavy. So we kind of walk through what's their day-to-day life like right now. Is their fertility calendar ruling their life? In most cases it is, right? Okay, call me on day 1 of your period. And they're like, we can't do anything or go anywhere around this. So we really kind of weed through the process of what's happening with every aspect of their life. And then we hone in on the actual kind of fertility team that we're building. So who is their doctor? Do they have an acupuncturist? Are they seeing a therapist? I always recommend if they have external kind of depression or things that they're coming to the table with, that they would want to see somebody else in a side with a coach as well.
Right.
So it really just depends on what that person is seeking as the outcome for that moment. Like for people right now, a lot of they're on a break during summer and they want to get ready for that going into their next round, whether that's a
Right.
transfer or a retrieval. So how
Yeah.
can we make it the best time for them possible and not really dreading that upcoming retrieval or transfer and be excited about it,
Yeah.
because they're just living this human experience and we all base our emotions on our past experience, and for them that past experience hasn't been good. So how do we
Yeah.
change how we come to the table differently than we did last time? Whereas their doctors maybe changing their protocol or doing something else, we want to change the other aspect of it, right? So how are they showing up in their life? What are they creating every day? How are they having fun? All the things that kind of go across the board with people, but then also depending on each person's independent story, we hone in a little bit different.
So as a fertility specialist on kind of the other facet of this journey, the more medicalized part of it, I do always want to pay very close attention to the journey my patients are going through, and certainly never miss anything important that could contribute to a better experience for them. Are there things you see, or I guess wish, from your experience, both personal and now in your practice, that REs could do better to address patients' concerns? Like I certainly can say that I know most fertility centers aggressively would avoid even talking about anything spiritual that you mentioned earlier with fertility patients. It's just not part of the discussion. Medical, maybe the naturopath, maybe some traditional Chinese medicine or something like that. But, once you start getting into meditation, yoga, any kind of spiritual thing, you talk to people about prayer. I mean, that's considered like way off topic and generally not only not encouraged, but just kind of almost avoided. So are there things in there that you kind of wish we would address? Like, is there something all fertility specialists should learn from watching this show tonight to do a better job with our patients?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that there are more and more doctors that are becoming more and more aware of the fact that there is more to this story than just this medical side of things. The
Right.
Mayo Clinic did a study in 2013 that the path of a cancer patient is very similar to a fertility patient. That's pretty heavy, right? So knowing that the information that a patient is getting from you every morning or every day that they see you, they need that time to digest what that actually is meaning to them, right?
Yeah.
And for most of the information we're getting is not really retained while we are there. And a lot of it is getting gone through the nurses, which are amazing and all of that sort of stuff. But then when we walk out the door, I say as a patient, when we're walking out the door, we're kind of just feeling super lost and alone. And what do we do now? And how do we navigate this process? Because it's so much more than that
Right.
quick, uh, not interview, quick appointment that we have with the doctors, so to speak.
Sure.
So knowing that there's so many aspects and facets to a patient that go into not only their healthy, what they're ingesting, right? But the stress hormones that take place in their body are affecting the outcome of their body. Whether, I mean, and
Absolutely.
that's scientifically proven, we know that. So any doctor can't really deny that fact because there's so many studies around that. And so that's where we step in to help regulate the nervous system, help regulate the cortisol system so everything can work together. Some people don't want to meditate, they don't want to journal, they don't want to do all of those things. And that's where your coach, whoever you're working with, should find different avenues for you to regulate your nervous system and all of those things so that the scientists like yourself, the doctors, can really do their magic in conjunction with what we're doing. So the spiritual aspect of it is in and of itself sometimes funky, but I'm glad that you brought it up because we have this conversation often about now a lot of clinics offer acupuncture as part of their treatment with the transfers and whatnot.
Right.
people know what that means. They know Chinese medicine. They have an idea about that.
Sure.
Coaching is so big and it varies per coach. So I'm glad that you asked that question. And I really push people to talk with each coach that they're interested in working with to see how they work specifically in order to improve their outcome.
Yeah, I think, kind of growing through this process, going from training to practice to expansion now and being fairly busy. One of the things that kind of was a red flag early on was the vast majority of fertility centers really don't address that part of the patient journey. It's here's your medication, here's your protocol, here's your calendar, show up for your ultrasound, and that hand holding that is kind of necessary for a variety of reasons, in my opinion, not just from the educational component of it, but also from the standpoint of the fact that a lot of patients are stressed, as you mentioned, and then that does impact the hormones, or they are unsure of decisions that they need to make and they're not getting enough time from their physician, or even a lack of clarity. I mean, probably my biggest complaint about all of my fellow fertility specialists is there are very few people that actually explain things. Over and over again, we hear from patients, who went to another center, and I say to them, what was wrong? What did they tell you is wrong? They go, we don't know. They didn't tell us anything. So I think that element of it for us as fertility specialists is really critically important to address, and unfortunately is woefully poorly addressed, which is why fertility coaches is really a new phenomenon, but we've had very good relationships with our local coaches. And I think the more people learn about people like yourself and others who are providing these types of services, really the better the journey is for the patients, because anytime we can support them through that journey, it makes it so much better. We always use the catchphrase here that no one walks alone at VRC, but it's a hell of a lot easier to not walk alone when you've got a fertility coach jogging along the path with you the whole time. So we really see that synergy, and it can be hugely beneficial for the patients. I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys do, and especially when it's done the right way. I mean, I think it's a different story when you have certain individuals who are kind of practicing medicine on the side, telling patients what to do and what to eat and what not. But it's definitely amazing when you're looking at it from that multifaceted standpoint of what's your mental health like, what's your spiritual health like, what's your physical health like, what are your goals and aspirations with this, and let's build a model for you with your physician that works. So do you work closely with the doctors as well, and do you find that they're accepting of your services, or is it still kind of touch and go in that area?
Yes, we work with the doctors and we get a lot of referrals from the doctors, quite honestly, when they're able to say, like, I have a patient that's feeling pretty uneasy or sensitive, or lack of a better term, a little more high maintenance. Are you open to working with them? And we all kind of know we go through these heightened senses of, or times of, just wanting more answers than the nurses can give us or the doctor has time for us, right? And that's
Yeah.
again where a coach can help to mitigate some of that between them. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because a really good coach builds your fertility team. Your
Right.
coach is not to be teaching you or telling you what to do medically, telling you what your protocol should be or shouldn't be, nutrition, all of those things. If they're a nutritionist, to have studied that and whatnot, specific to fertility, even, I would say, because it's so broad. And what I see a lot are people who have gone through it and then say, okay, I'm going to be a fertility coach, but they may be a genius in their own what they went through, right? They may have had PCOS, so they know a lot about PCOS, or they may have
Right.
had fibroids, so they know a lot about that. But there's so much more to that, to really holding the space. We call it, say, not getting in the pool with your patient, your client, and knowing where those boundaries are and knowing where your lane is, right? So there's the fertility doctor, the OB, whoever it is that you're working with, the acupuncturist, the nutritionist, dietitian, if they're working with a naturopath as well, whatever it may be, everybody has a space and a place for that patient in
Yeah.
order to lift them up to get to their point of success. And I think that's what's really important. You want to make sure that everyone's kind of staying in their lane and supporting each other, and ultimately supporting the patient for that goal.
I'm chuckling because my nurse manager's favorite expression is everybody stay in their lane. So I love that you said that. It's echoing in my mind. So do you have a team of people that help you, or are you kind of doing this solo when you're approaching it with patients?
So we also coach other fertility coaches in order to kind of have this domino effect of getting more people out there with a curated information, so
Right.
that again, we don't have people just turning up saying I can do this without really being vetted for the role. Essentially, this is
Sure.
such a huge turning point in people's lives, and it's so delicate, and we don't want to say things that we can't achieve and show up in a way that isn't really um, ethical, I would say, in integrity. So we coach other
Right.
people to do that. And then we have group sessions as well as individual one-on-one. So again, you'll find that there's some people that maybe their case is so unusual. They may have two uteruses and they don't want to talk about that in a group setting, right?
Right.
They may have, they may be doing it themselves, a single mom by choice or not choice, but again, they can't relate to other people that are going through this journey. So there's so many reasons that people seek out one-on-ones versus group sessions, but we do opt for group sessions so that it can, again, take some of the burden off. If maybe you just want to be a fly on the wall and know that there's other people going through similar things. Because as unique as your story may be, we all know the disappointment. We all know the desperation. We all know kind of you never thought in a million years you would be on this path. You thought, don't have sex because you're going to get pregnant. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's really not the case. Now what do I do?
Right. What's the most common, I guess, complaint or concern you hear from patients that come to you?
They're just frustrated and exhausted, I feel like, are the biggest complaints. Not really understanding why, like you said, nothing's really explained to them to the full extent of why things are happening, and not really understanding why can't we get the answers that we need to get, or why can't we change the protocols? If it didn't work last time, why aren't they changing it again? Or, I continue to have the same issues. Maybe I shouldn't be taking bupropion, right? Or whatever it may be. And so those types of frustrations, but also really just kind of this, they get into this chronic level of depression and sadness, kind of, because the whole world is revolving around this calendar of when they're going to be retrieving, when they're going to transfer, and whether that happens, and then waiting that 9 days to get the test. And, so it's not it's not an ideal way to live life. And that's why we really just try to tee that up in a different way so they can actually be having fun. And we are the reminder, checking in with them every day, every other day. How are you doing? What's going on? What's the update? Just that accountability of, we're shifting the neural net in their brain, that it's not going to be that same human experience that you had before. We're literally having and doing tools to change that. And it's different for everybody, like I said before.
So do you have kind of like a program people go through? Is it like you're going to be with us for 6 weeks or 12 weeks, or they have different packages that they can select? Or is it just kind of, let's come for one session, and then if you need more, you can come for more?
We do 3 sessions of 3 or 6. And within that comes additional Voxer support, which is essentially like texting. Again, because we all know that this journey is not a once a week for 50 minutes sort of deal. It changes on the day, basically.
Yeah.
So we are there to respond to them within, we say 24 hours, it never lasts that long, but just to the check-in to say, how are things going? I have one client right now that has to now do a removal of some cysts. And so that whole shift has changed to finding a surgeon rather than working with the RE. So we're working through that of, finding referrals. What does that look like? How dealing with the delay of thinking you're having a transfer to now you're going to have surgery, and figuring all that out. So it really just depends on what they're going through. But 3 or 6 weeks is a package, with the hopes that, we're not signing them up for a 3-month term, because we're hoping that they'll be out and pregnant by that time.
Right. So that's obviously a lot of hand holding that you do through the journey for them. And I think, again, that's so critical, because we tend to either ignore that element, like I said earlier, or it's just not addressed as well as it should be. I mean, we've obviously got amazing nurses, we've got an amazing team. Some centers have a psychologist or a counselor on hand, but the ability to kind of instantly reach out and have someone there and be there for you on an emotional level, on that spiritual level, or even if it's just on a, I have a quick question that I need to run by somebody level, we're not good at doing that. And so I think that's the niche you guys have really addressed in a incredibly meaningful and powerful way. So like I said, we love having the fertility coaches there because they do really make the journey smoother, and I think patients do benefit from that. The easier they have from the experience, the more simple it is, the more educated it is, the more calm it is for them, the better they do. And that's something that's being shown over and over again. We know that the stress levels can really impact your success rate. So certainly anything that happens on your end that reduces that is great. I guess my one question to you, and I'm just curious, is you're kind of taking all of this burden on. So what do you do when you're stressed from listening to other people's stresses and frustrations all day? Also having gone through it yourself, like how do you deal with that, or how does your team deal with that as they're kind of absorbing all of this from others?
That's a great question. I first want to address what you said before. Thank you for pointing that out about what we do, but also we bow down to what you guys do and all your journey through school. And, that was not the path for us. Hence the fact we didn't go down that road. And so there's something that we continue to have such a high esteem for all the doctors that specialize in fertility and really drive this home, because if it wasn't for you guys, at the end of the day, that's really where the outcome comes in a lot of these stories. So thank you for doing what you do, and now seeing the broader vision for all of these patients that are coming through the door. I get that question a lot of how do I kind of detach from the heaviness of the situation? And it can be, especially with the losses and the disappointments and whatnot. But I also feel super blessed to be able to know that I'm fortunate that I can basically do some tools it's my own type of meditation, so to speak, to detach from stories or situations that I know are maybe a little too heavy, that I don't want to take back to my family that night and whatnot, because we are dealing with a lot of big things, and the fact that I can still relate to them and let them know that I get it, and cry with them when it's appropriate, and really keep strong for them when they need somebody to be strong because they're not. I feel very fortunate that I have a gift to do that. And, for now, it works.
That's amazing. Roughly how many people are you helping per year?
Oh, gosh. Between group sessions and one-on-ones, I think per year we're probably at 1,000 to 1,500.
Oh wow! So it's a huge number of people.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, fantastic. And if people want to contact you, you help people from anywhere. It doesn't matter where they're coming from, whether they're North American, Canadian, U.S., European. It doesn't matter.
All over the world. Yeah.
All over the world.
The beautiful thing about fertility is it is the same no matter where you are.
Right.
As far as the stress level, the drugs are the same. You'll be hard pressed to find things that are different. The one things that I would say that are different some places is whether they grade embryos and things like that. But really, it's very similar no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I know a little bit about international fertility care, and I definitely see some differences in some countries. Europe is a lot more kind of reserved, and because a lot of it is socialized, they have no hesitation telling patients to just come over and over and over again. And in some instances in the US, it can be like that too, where clients have insurance and the fertility centers just keep telling them to keep trying until it works. Whereas in Canada, most people are not insured. And so, and because we work in this socialized healthcare system, we kind of very fiercely defend our patients. So we're the polar opposite. We're not telling them to come over and over again. I very much want the first cycle to run perfectly and smoothly and make it work right from the get-go, so that people aren't using a lot of their hard-earned money and resources and future for their children to invest into the process. Rather, they're successful right off the hop and they can always go tell their friends, and that's how we want to grow our business. So yeah, I do see differences.
That statement, Dr. Victory, is huge. For somebody to come in with that energy, for you to say that, like, we want to nail this on the first round, yeah, sign me up, right? That's a different energy of like, okay, well, this is how it's going to go. It might go this way. It might go that way. Like, I think we're all just looking for somebody to kind of hold that ground. And yeah, maybe it works out a different way, but going into it, like, let's go, let's make it happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell patients, like, we don't do it unless it's perfect. I mean, I'm not interested in saying, oops, we need to do it again, or have a disaster at some standpoint, or not address everything. One of our common phrases here is, cookie cutter protocols in medicine don't really work in this field at all. We're not baking cookies, we're making babies. So, following that kind of formulaic medicine approach where you don't address all of the different elements really just doesn't work. And even within the biology, which is kind of our more specific element, everybody's different. So it's critical to address all of those. If people want to get in touch with you, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
My website, elizabethking.com, or Instagram at @theofficialelizabethking.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Are there questions for Ms. King?
There are some.
Yeah.
There are some.
Do you mind taking a few questions?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay. Let me just scroll here.
They kind of scroll by, so Tarek's always got to scroll back to find them.
Hi, Elizabeth. Been in egg retrieval hells for 2.5 years and finally going into my first FET this fall. How to lean into feeling more calm going into the first transfer? How many sessions with you?
We do a free discovery call, 15 to 30 minutes, for us to just feel like, is this a good fit for you? And even during that, we can figure out what feels good for you. Like I said, I don't tell people to journal, meditate, all those things if that's not your jam. You need to have something resonate with you on a cellular level, so it changes you on a cellular level. You feel good about doing that. So that's where we kind of dig through to see what is it that makes you feel good, and then what that would look like for you going into whatever it is that you may be going into.
Another question here is, do fertility coaches answer medical questions?
No, we do not. So we make that very clear. We don't answer medical questions. We don't diagnose. We help you to come up with medical questions to talk to your doctor about that maybe you're not sure about or not aware of. So you can go into your appointments maybe a little bit better prepared with better questions, but we by no means will help you diagnose or answer questions in that regard.
And I think that's critical, because I think a lot of times there are specialists, associated or affiliated healthcare specialists, that will kind of approach this from the standpoint of saying, I've learned things, I know things, I can offer advice. And then there are those like yourself who say, I know the information, but like you said, I'm going to stay in my lane. And my lane can be to facilitate helping them develop the questions they either need to ask or should be asking. But I'm not going to provide the answers. I'm going to leave that to the biology guy or the doctor or whatever the case is. And we're going to facilitate growing that knowledge base that they need, because you know where the gaps are from your experience, but not fill it yourself. You're just creating the framework to fill it rather than filling it. And I think that distinction speaks volumes about you, because we don't always find that. I mean, I still deliver babies. I'm one of the very few fertility specialists that still practices obstetrics too. And we do get individuals, for example, sometimes doulas, who are wonderful and they're supportive and they're, really making the experience an incredible experience for the patients. But at the same time, you get some who are in there who feel that, they have medical qualifications and will start kind of, instead of supporting the process, kind of offering medical advice. And that can not only be potentially, complex for us, but sometimes harmful. And so I love the fact that you're differentiating there. And I think that's a super important distinction for patients to be aware of too, because a lot of times when they don't get the answers from us, they're looking for it elsewhere. And fertility coaches are a really good resource because you have that experience, but it's still really important to flip that back and say to the patients, you deserve to get the answers you need from your doctor. And it's our responsibility as the physicians to provide that. If we're not doing a good job, it's, that's important for us to know and to do better with.
Right. And that's where I would say then you need to find a new doctor if they're not answering those questions. But back to your point about the biology of everybody being different, they can find somebody in a chat room or online that looks similar to them. And so they think that they have maybe the same diagnosis or they want the same protocol. But if they have a different thyroid level or they have, something else we don't know about, that's why you need to go back to your doctor and see, like, what is it specifically for me that I need, right? What is your AMH different than the next person? So it's going to require something else. It's just too messy to go down that road if you're self-diagnosing or taking a diagnosis or medical advice from somebody other than your doctor.
For sure.
Maybe a quick question for Liz. Will stress impact implantation or embryos growing?
Well, I would say stress impacts everything in our lives. Now, to the effect that it, is, as I always like to say, is it going to be the deal breaker for your success or non-success? That's really kind of the unknown. We don't really know that, right? There's no scientific evidence to date that I'm aware of that can say X levels of stress mean that that's not going to happen. But what we do know is stress affects the body in all ways. Anytime, anywhere you look at it, we know that. So my answer would be yes, but there's no scientific evidence that I am aware of that would say how that would work specifically.
Yeah, I mean, from the scientific literature, we know that there can be reductions in success related to your stress level, but it's so hard to kind of measure and to apply, right? Like, how do you compare your stress versus my stress versus Tarek's stress? He's always stressed because the show is super complicated to run, but it's a tough thing to measure, and comparing stress levels between people, there's no metric for that, right? So it's a hard study to apply to the general population, but I agree. I mean, it's definitely not a good thing. It's certainly not going to be helpful to be stressed. And we do know that there are either subtle or gross hormonal changes that come along with high levels of stress. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're going to probably take some live questions not related to fertility coaching just for the last few minutes. So I want to offer you our very, very sincere gratitude and thanks for coming on the show tonight. It was wonderful to have you. So you can reach Elizabeth at elizabethking.com or the official Elizabeth King on Instagram. So reach out to her if you need fertility coaching help, and she and her team will be there to help you guys out. And thank you so much. And if you have further insights or things you'd like to offer back to our audience in the future, don't hesitate. You were wonderful to have on, and we would love to hear from you again.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening. You take care.
You too.
Okay, bye now. So the amazing Elizabeth King, I'm super impressed.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible. 1,500 people a year, that's a lot of patients. So, I think it underscores the fact that there are so many places that just don't do a great job. And we certainly have other fertility coaches that we work with. They're in fact on our website. So, you can check them out as well. Just go to our website and look for the fertility coaches, and maybe we'll add Miss King on there too. But they're local if you're in Canada or Ontario, and they can help you out as well. And so don't hesitate to engage in that. Sure, it costs a little bit. I mean, we didn't get into how much this costs, but you are going to be paying for the service. Nothing in life anymore is free. But I think it can be really beneficial. And if you can go through this journey with less stress and a more positive outlook on the whole process, you're going to do better. I think that's a slam dunk for anybody going through it. So I think we still have some time.
Yeah, you got 15 minutes.
Fire away.
From TikTok.
Yeah.
I did stims for a normal 10, 11 days and had egg retrieval. I developed a thyroid issue and now I'm on meds.
Sure.
Could stim meds do this?
Yeah, so stim meds increase your estrogen, and when your estrogen level goes up, your TSH goes up as well. So it shouldn't necessarily be permanent, but there are associations between increased estrogen levels and thyroid disruption, so or falling out of a euthyroid status, which is a normally balanced thyroid. So yeah, that can happen. I've never heard of it becoming permanent. But also keep in mind 10 to 15% of women have underlying thyroid disease or will develop underlying thyroid disease. So it's incredibly common to unmask it when something like this happens. It may have been kind of lurking, waiting for the chance to show up, and then it shows up because you've now sort of triggered it with this medication. So, or protocol or estrogen levels. So yeah, that is something we see, and we definitely see patients whose thyroid levels go up when they start estrogen. Yeah.
What is the success rate of getting rid of endometrial hyperplasia and getting pregnant with IUI?
Wow. Crystal ball question. I can't answer that. The success rates for getting rid of endometrial hyperplasia, depending on which of the 4 endometrial hyperplasias you have. So there's simple without atypia, complex without atypia, simple with atypia, complex with atypia. So, and that's in sequence of best to worst. So, simple hyperplasia without atypia is pretty easy to treat. I've never heard of a failure, in fact. So the vast majority of those patients will be cured. On the opposite end, complex hyperplasia with atypia has an underlying 25% chance that you have cancer when you get that diagnosis. So that's obviously going to be much harder to treat medically and may require using a surrogate, because typically the treatment for that is hysterectomy. Not always, and in fertility cases we do try progesterone, but you can't treat cancer with progesterone. Typically you have to remove. If you just have complex atypical hyperplasia, that can be treated with progesterone, but not once it's full on cancer in most cases. So it really depends on what you're dealing with. IUI in general has anywhere from a low of about a 7% success rate to a high of about 20-25%. So you're asking kind of two very separate questions, but a lot of it depends on your biology and also why you have endometrial hyperplasia. And then the rest of your health can impact your IUI success rate. So fantastic question. In fact, on my paper is, on my desk, you're on it. I'm going to yank it out from underneath your computer there. Is risk assessment of endometrial cancer and endometrial intraepithelial neoplasia in women with abnormal bleeding and implications for clinical management. So this was a paper that I had pulled a couple of years ago, and it was sitting on my desk, and I found it when I was cleaning through papers. So it's right there. So yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of things you need to look at and decide how important they are. Yeah.
Dr. V, when do you recommend or refer a patient to a reproductive immunologist?
So I do a lot of that myself. However, I do have one colleague in particular that I trust very, very much, and he's a brilliant guy, and I have a lot of respect for him. In fact, we're considering kind of revising the show so that the two of us are on it. And so that's Dr. Frederick Zineku in Toronto, and he's with a clinic called Tripod. And I have no hesitation promoting Fred because Fred's awesome, and he's a really good doctor and a great guy. And his wife, Chloe Romaine, is also there, and she's also a reproductive immunologist, so they kind of tag team it. So yeah, I mean, if I'm confused, if it's, getting super complicated, if the patients just want the reassurance of talking to a sort of hyper specialized RI, I'm happy to refer them on to Fred. Most of the things I'm dealing with on my own, we now provide lit therapy, we have sub-Q IG, we have intralipids, we have Neupogen and PRP and all of that stuff. So a lot of the basics we're doing already, but if you need additional information or want further evaluation or investigations beyond the, I would say, pretty comprehensive stuff we're doing, I'll get people in touch with Fred. And I can, with great confidence, say he's the best in the Toronto area and likely one of the best in Canada.
I'm going down the donor embryo adoption path.
Okay.
And have matched privately.
Oh, nice.
The embryos are in a clinic in the U.S.
Sure.
Does your clinic accept donor embryos, and what would the process be to move them to VRC?
It's super easy. We just have to make sure they meet our quality metrics. So they have to be decent quality embryos. And then we just need to make sure they have some kind of STD testing. And then you're good to go. That's all there is to it. Shipping, we use a company called Core Cryolab. They'll literally pick it up. It'll go to FedEx. It comes in this metal liquid nitrogen tank. That's put inside of this other plastic, could probably survive nuclear Armageddon tank. And then that's sealed with a lock. It's like triple twist tied so that nothing can, break through it. And then there is a thermometer with an alarm put on the tank to monitor the temperature of it. It's FedExed over. We usually get it within 1 day or 2 days. The liquid nitrogen can last 7 to 10. So the embryos are safe and sound, even if there's a delay. Once they're here, we put them in our tanks, and then we just get you ready, and away we go. So first of all, congratulations on finding donor embryos. It's tough to find them, so you're very fortunate that you did. And yeah, it's actually very facile, very easy for us to take care of that. We have no trouble doing that at all. We get embryos from all over the world every day here. So
for a modified natural FET, first it makes sense to do
ERA? Oh God. I could just tell from the expression on your face. No. For whoever's asking the ERA question, the ERA has been categorically proven to not only be useless, but actually represent an 11% decrease in your chances of success. So please, for the love of God, don't do an ERA. In fact, I was thinking of posting a new video, and that video is going to be like one of these shorts that we keep posting that seem to go viral on TikTok all the time. And I was just going to talk about, the top 3 or 4 things to know when you should not be going to that fertility center anymore. And my number 1 was going to be if they tell you to do the ERA. Any physician telling you to do an ERA test just doesn't read. Like, I can't make that any more simple. The ERA is useless. It is categorically proven to be useless. No one can support doing that test anymore. The only time you can justify it is literally if you've tried every single other thing to do and you can't get the lining to thicken and you just want to see if it's receptive. And even that now is questionable, because the one study done by Doyle et al. In JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, actually showed that the ERA test can't even discriminate between receptive and non-receptive. And they didn't know that they had shown that in their test, like in their publication. But there's another physician that actually reviewed their data and looked at it with a very keen eye. And it was a great article that he wrote. And he very clearly demonstrated that the data they had demonstrated to anyone analyzing it that the ERA test doesn't even work. Like, it can't tell you if you're receptive or non-receptive. That part of it is actually flawed. So I genuinely have not done an ERA test. God, it's probably been 4 years since we did an ERA. 4 or 5 years I've not done an ERA test now. It's been a very long time. Definitely since before the pandemic, for sure. It's extraordinarily rare where I would recommend it to somebody. And yeah, it would literally be my number 1 reason to tell people not to go to that fertility clinic. It doesn't work. It just absolutely doesn't work. Doesn't matter what anybody tells you. I am prepared to argue with them with, 7 different trials and 2 meta-analyses now that it doesn't work. great. You know you love that question.
You know, it's one of those medical questions I feel like I can answer. You know?
Yeah. Plus, you love watching me get riled up
it's
about
great.
how much I hate it. Yeah. I'm very passionate about how much I hate the ERA.
It sounds like the biggest scam.
I think they meant well. Like, I'm not going to question. I know at least one of the guys. He's a smart guy. He's a hardcore researcher. Yes, he's probably worth several $100 million, but he's a super smart, intelligent guy. Does tons of research. He's very well published. He's a smart guy. I've heard him speak many times. But like when they knew that this test didn't work, which they knew like 5 or 6 years ago, they should have stopped using it. That company is still promoting a test that they know doesn't work. Their own trial showed it didn't work. So at that point, I think it went from, hey, this is a really great idea we had, but damn, it didn't work, to this is a lot of money. What do we do?
They got 1,000 back there. They got to do something with it.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah. Bad.
I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I think it's an interesting question.
Sure.
How important is diet when trying to conceive? I really struggle eating most vegetables.
So we actually reviewed that on the show not too long ago, and actually it's one of our like kind of reasonably rapidly growing YouTube videos. So if you go to our YouTube channel and you just select videos, I think it's one of the first few on the channel there. So it actually is titled "How Important is Diet?" So there was a study we reviewed, I think that was probably 2.5, 3 months ago, which actually said diet is quite important. That there are certain foods that you should have a reasonable amount of to increase your chances, and that people that were high in sugar or high in cholesterol actually did not do as well. So I think that the diet component is something that is evolving, but there is more and more evidence coming out that your diet is important. And there are a couple of good studies now demonstrating that the Mediterranean diet or the Dutch diet both contribute to higher chances of success when you're going through fertility therapy. So am I a believer that your diet's important? Yes. Am I telling my patients to go gluten-free, sugar-free, fat-free, everything free? No, you're left with air. I mean, that's absurd, right? You got to be practical. And sometimes you can overdo it where you're so stressed from, micromanaging your diet that your cortisol levels are up from your stress level because you looked at the hamburger as you drove by the McDonald's sign or something like that. Like that's overkill. You don't need to do that, guys. So, if once in a while you want something that's like cheat food, it's not going to make the difference between you getting pregnant and not getting pregnant. In the majority of circumstances. Certainly if you have, gluten celiac disease, don't be eating gluten. Like that definitely is going to negatively impact things. But for the majority of us who don't have an allergy or a sensitivity to a specific type of food or product, your diet will help, but don't be so rigid that it's actually making you, unhealthy. That's also not good. And you can't. If you're overdoing the rigidness of your approach to your diet, the stress alone will outweigh any benefit from the diet. Good question. You were right.
I thought you'd like it.
Well done, man. Well done.
At your office, can you share the gender of the embryo after a successful transfer?
Nope. Federal offense in Canada, so we can't. I mean, first of all, I don't know it because when we get I don't have any results here and I'd have to blank out the name, but when we get our results from any genetics company we work with, and we generally use Cooper, the column where they print out the sex is blank. Like it doesn't even say sex at the top of the column. There's just this like gap in the report where we know that the sex is, but we can't get it. The only time you can get it is if you have a genetically linked condition that justifies having a sex report, like a gender report, because there are certain conditions where you can't have a child from that particular sex because of the fact that they'll be carriers for a lethal disease or a life-altering disease or whatever. So in that circumstance, we are allowed to, but in every other circumstance, we are not. So during routine PGT analysis, we don't even know what the baby is. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell anybody because if it ever gets out, we'd probably be in a whole lot of legal trouble. So, no, you have to wait till your 9-10 week NIPT test and then find out. Yeah.
Hey, Dr. V, will Lupron Depot have some long-term impact for DOR patients? Thanks.
In theory, it should not. So it's suppressing the normal mitotic processes and meiotic processes that are going on in your cells in the ovary. And so by stopping those, it's kind of like time standing still in your ovary. So it shouldn't, and that's why it works for patients undergoing chemotherapy. But it's not 100%, and we know that actually from the chemotherapy literature. So as you're on it, your ovary will still get weaker, but it should be pausing the weakening of your ovaries while you're on it.
901.
One or two more, because we spent so much time with the lovely Miss King.
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay, sir.
I'm officially catatonic from sleeping 3 hours last night, but...
Oh, this is so great. This is not a question, but it's just great. I saw you visiting my clinic yesterday when I was in the waiting room and contemplated coming up to you and asked if I should do the ERA.
Okay, so you and I are going to keep hush about that because that is top secret, and I don't want anyone knowing about that yet. But thank you for being judicious, and for God's sakes, don't ever do the ERA. Yes, please don't do the ERA. It's useless. The ERA is 100% categorically useless. Don't do it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You're something. They recognize you in an that's really something.
All I will admit to is I was not in Ontario. I was not. Well, I said it already. I could have said I was not in Windsor. I was not in Ontario even. So we were in another place last night and the night before, and we are looking at the opportunity to bring a little VRC magic to that part of the world. So we'll see how things go.
I was diagnosed with atypical hyperplasia.
Okay, this is the person probably that asked the question before.
And got pregnant naturally. Don't give up hope.
There you go. You definitely shouldn't give up hope. If you have atypical hyperplasia, again, if there's no... so if it's simple with atypia, the chance of cancer is only 3%, so it's not sky high. If it's complex with atypia, it's a much higher chance. That's a big factor. But the main issue with atypia is it is curable as long as there's no cancer there. So you get diagnosed, we do an endometrial biopsy, we make sure there's no cancer there. As long as there's no cancer there, you're okay to be treated with high dose, very strong progesterone. Megestrol is the one that we use, megestrol acetate. And then you stay on that for 3 to 6 months, you get rebiopsied, and that can be treated. I actually have a patient myself who actually had that, and we treated her, and then she got pregnant, and now she's successful. So that's a not uncommon outcome. There is always hope. It just depends on what's going on, and certainly the patients with the complex hyperplasia with atypia, because there's an underlying cancer risk, those ones are a lot tougher to manage. We still try, but you got to be really careful and be prepared.
Dr. VNT.
VNT.
My favorite Tuesday night crew.
Woo! That's us again. Well
great
done.
Intro.
Yeah, that is a great intro.
My BV is back.
Oh God. I love the enthusiasm you put into that. Yeah.
After 3 months of Lupron Depot.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
I did 30 days of antibiotics prior to Lupron and resetted clear. Any recs for clearing and preventing?
Treat your partner. That's the main one. Take tons of probiotics, vaginal and oral. That's about all you can do. BV's kind of tough to eradicate sometimes, so it can be a hassle. Do your best to get rid of it. If you're doing fertility testing, make sure it's not in your uterus because it can go back and forth between the vagina and the uterus as well. Make sure your partner is being treated. So all of those things can be important. Are we still going?
Oh, we can end it. Whatever you want.
Tarek's terminal question.
Sure. We'll take it from TikTok.
TikTok it is.
Do you check thyroids and possible thyroid antibodies during IUI, IVF, and FET cycles?
We check everybody when we first meet them and we adjust for it. We don't necessarily recheck unless they were way off. But once we've stabilized them, because we do it routinely with all of our patients, 100% of our patients get it at the start when we're doing their diagnostic testing. So once we've determined that, once we've stabilized it, we don't necessarily recheck. But if there is someone that's still unstable or it's taking a long time, yeah, we'll recheck sometimes. We don't check everybody all the time because it should remain stable if they're on the right dose. Good? So what are we doing next week? Are we going to have a show for these folks? I'm on holidays. All those who are in favor of us having a show while I'm on holidays, thumbs up. And those who are not in favor of us having a show, smiley face. Smiley face, hearts, thumbs up. If you want us to have the show, we don't want thumbs down because
no, we don't want thumbs down. That's right. That's the smiley face.
Smiley face. Oh, you mean smiley face if you don't want
no show.
Now let's just do the positive. If you want us to do the show, smiley face, thumbs up, or hearts. And if you don't want us to do the show, just don't do anything.
We got sad face because we missed the question.
Oh, we did? All right, ask the question.
We missed the million questions.
I know.
Okay. Does your weight change have an effect on the epidural during labor?
Does your weight change have an effect on the impact of the epidural during labor?
I'll read it verbatim. Hold on. Does weight change? Maybe that's a period. How effective is the epidural during labor? I don't know. You can read it.
Does weight change how effective an epidural is during labor?
Does your body's weight, when it changes,
affect the epidural? No. No.
Not like that, but...
No.
Okay.
It definitely isn't like that.
Yeah.
I'm really happy you are not in a distraction.
I should grab the camera all the time.
Yeah, that gesture was just wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we got it.
Okay.
Anyone else we missed? Let me just real quick, just to make sure no one else says that.
No more sad faces.
What are your thoughts? Last one, because this is good. What are your thoughts on vaping and doing IVF?
Oh my God. No, 100% no. Vaping. Watch our Huberman thing on TikTok. 1.3 million people watch it. Vaping, marijuana, smoking, nicotine, hookah, shisha, anything you can think of that's vaporized, anything is terrible for you when you are doing IVF. It is full of chemicals that are detrimental to your health and very detrimental to your reproduction. Alcohol is the same. Marijuana is the same. Nicotine products are the same. Do not vape. Do not smoke. Do not, smoke up. And don't drink either. All that stuff is terrible for you. Okay, so what were there? Hearts, thumbs, smiley faces? Did we get anything?
You obviously got smiley faces.
Also, they want
us to do hearts.
Oh God.
Some people said take your holiday. Some people said enjoy your holiday. It seems like it could be tied.
It's a tie.
Smiley face, thumbs up, hearts.
Oh, they want their questions answered. All right.
But I leave it up to your better judgment, sir.
You know what we could do? I could pre-record a show with you.
They want their questions.
Where we answer all the questions we missed from last time and this time.
Oh, okay.
They keep accumulating. So
yeah, that's
true.
Do that? There's a major accumulation.
All right. So you know what, guys? We'll put out a video. We'll let you know if we're doing a live. We'll promote something for you. Stay tuned. Hopefully in about 2 weeks, we'll get Nathan Treff on the show. I know I've mentioned him many times. He is the...
Please have a vacation. You're allowed to have fun too.
Yeah, but this is fun. We love doing this show. We'll do something fun for sure. And wish me luck. I just bought my first ever pet because our feral cat that my wife was taking care of, I don't think is with us in this world any longer because it hasn't come around for quite some time. So I bought her a beautiful little Persian white kitty cat to make up for the loss of our other one. So yeah, this should be interesting.
When you get that cat and you take a picture of it, I guarantee you.
I know. It is a pretty cute kitty.
That's a very cute
it's
cat.
a very cute cat. Yeah. It's a little cotton ball about this big. So wish me luck. I've never had a pet before in my life.
Go to sleep, Dr. V, somebody said.
Yeah, I'm tired. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you either next week or the week after on Fertility Factor